we had three excavations last summer, and sorry. And so one was Abdira, the other one was Argilos, and the third one was the new Mani project. So I'll start here with the presentation of the Abdira urban plan project. The Abdira urban plan project is one of a few SIG projects in northern Greece. It is a synergasia with the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and the Canadian Institute in Greece, co-directed by Deputy Director Maria Chrysafi of the Efforette of Antiquities of Xanthi and Dr. Maria Papaioannou from the University of New Brunswick, with support from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada and the Father Theodore Mirkopoulos Foundation. The site of Abdira lies along the northern Aegean coast. The archaic classical city was founded in the 7th and 6th centuries BC, first by colonists from Clazomenae and later from Teos. In the 4th century BC, the city was relocated further south along the coast, most likely under Philip II, King of Macedon. The Abdira project examines the town plan of the Hellenistic Roman period city by documenting the transformation of the built urban environment from the early Hellenistic period to Roman times. The insula of houses is the best preserved housing block at the site. Excavations were conducted in the 1950s-60s by Dimitrios Lazaridis, Ephor of Eastern Macedonia and Thrace. He brought to light an almost complete plan of a Roman period peristyle house, House B on the slide, with only the north wall of the house missing, and two small 10 by 20 meter courtyard houses of prostas type, House C's and D. Conservation work by the Efforette of Antiquities of Xanthi identified sections of city's main arterial routes located along the south, west, and east sides of this insula. Geophysical investigations conducted in 2024, GPR and magnetic gradiometry, confirmed the presence and width of these roads, a little over 5 meters, and their extension beyond the boundaries of the insula to the north and west, and the continuation of the city's grid plan to the west and east. GPR results also revealed the missing north wall of the Roman peristyle, seen on your right, which with much to our surprise, did not follow a straight line as was expected, but was moved further south about 2 meters. Moreover, contrary to past theories, the domestic plans of the insula of houses were not uniform. From its initial phase, the insula featured a variety of house types. 2 peristyle houses of different size were identified, and also smaller 10 by 20 meter courtyard houses, initially of prostas type, with later modifications. In 2025, we were able to ground truth the GPR results. Excavations commenced along the north side of the peristyle house from west to east to a length of to about 25 meters in order to expose the north wall of the peristyle house. An extensive destruction layer, 16 meters long, was found along the north side of the peristyle house, and a small section of the north wall was exposed, visible in the highlighted blue area to your left. A small trench was also dug 2 meters south of wall number 4 to locate the line of the north wall of the house that was relocated further south. Excavations also extended along the east wall of the Roman peristyle house in a north direction to locate the northeast corner of the house and the road delineating the northern limits of the insula. There appears to be a 5 meter gap between the wall remains to the north and the east wall of the Perreault house. This space may have accommodated a roadway. If true, then, the road along the north side of the insula of houses did not follow a straight line, but was anomalous, to accommodate perhaps more important structures to the north or a ground anomaly. Overall, this area was a challenging site to dig, as the clay soil was extremely compact, rock hard throughout. Work therefore progressed slowly, so we were unable to reach the ground level of the Roman Hellenistic phases of the north wall of the houses as originally planned. Excavations were also conducted in the eastern portico of the Roman Perreault house to document Lazaridis' trench excavated in 1954 and expose the flagstone stone pavement of a Hellenistic dwelling. Early photographs, the one on your right, were used to identify the exact location of Lazaridis' trenches. At the south end of this trench, 3 large blocks of a flagstone pavement were discovered out of the 5 mentioned by Lazaridis. From this point, Lazaridis dug a second trench, 50 centimeters wide, down the middle of the east portico, beginning at the south end and heading north, but no pavement was found. Numerous small artifacts were excavated, such as glass beads, glass bezel rings, gaming pieces, pottery lamp fragments, and as always, many sherds. A unique pyramidal bone pendant surfaced, and of course coins. All students found at least 1 coin, most of which were Hellenistic, and a few of the Roman period. At Argylos, we give them each a small bottle of ouzo. This bronze Hellenistic coin, which dates to 311 280 BC, is among one of the best preserved and almost in mint condition. Post-excavation work from July 14 to the 18th involved backfilling trenches and work at the museum, washing pottery sherds, conservation of small finds, collecting and digitizing field notes, cataloging selection of artifacts, and photography. For the moment, 2026, for this summer, 2026, we are returning to the site to complete the surface survey of the insula of houses by applying 3D electrical resistivity tomography to the excavated remains of houses. This will enable us to create a diagrammatic interpretation of the subsurface remains of the areas beneath the Roman Perreault house and courtyard houses excavated by Lazaridis in the 50s, 60s that are currently missing, since they could not be examined with GPR. The results will allow us to map the architectural remains and determine how they tie in with the Hellenistic flagstone pavement excavated last year in the east portico of the Roman Perreault house. These results will provide a complete picture of the subsurface remains of the entire insula and answer questions concerning the extent to which earlier Hellenistic domestic phases were integrated into later Roman period structures. Thank you very much. Merci, merci Maria and her colleagues up north. I'm going to go down south and come up north after that. I want to present you this new Southern Mani archaeological project, Project 25, around Porto Caglio. Through the Canadian Institute in Greece, the Southern Mani archaeological project was granted a 2-year permit from the Laconian Ephorate of Antiquities to conduct pilot research around the bay of Porto Caglio, located just north of the Matapan Peninsula at the southern tip of the Mani. The goal of the 2-year pilot project was to lay the groundwork for a long-term regional survey of southern Mani. In 2024, we commissioned plan-based LIDAR imagery and initiated geological survey throughout the broader region. And in 2025, we conducted pedestrian field survey around Porto Caglio Bay. The Southern Mani Archaeological Project is a multidisciplinary research program that seeks to investigate diachronic landscape use, settlement patterns, and resource exploitation at southernmost point of the Peloponnese. Through regional archaeological, geological, ethnographic, and historical research, we aim to better understand the relationship between this part of southern Laconia and the wider eastern Mediterranean region over time. Surface survey around Porto Caglio was carried out in May 2025. We adapted traditional methods of intensive survey, a surface survey, to allow for flexible and efficient collection in the mountainous and heavily vegetated terrain of southern Mani. Nioria Beach and Franco Clisi. A significant scatter of material was located near Nioria Beach, below an eroding terrace wall and above a modern field house. Some of the finds from these units date to the Hellenistic, early Roman, and late Roman periods. Just above the beach there is a ruined structure known locally as Franco Clisi, Frankish church. The square structure, which is covered in vegetation, measures about 12 by 12 meter and has an entrance on the east wall. 5 niches were recorded in the thick interior walls and on the exterior and either side of the entrance. Along the exposed faces of the interior wall are multiple square holes, potentially for beams to support a wooden floor. Only a few pieces of pottery and tile were recovered in direct association with the structure, making it difficult to date by association. The structure likely was a Frankish tower, perhaps constructed in the 13th century during the Franco-Cratia. The niches may also indicate a dual religious function for the structure. To the northwest of Nioria Beach, we identified a complex of walls and other features in a prominent platform of land that is elevated above the bowl of the valley. Located along a field path that cuts across the valley from the Achilleo fortress between 2 ravines, there are a series of about 10 wide terraces that are surrounded by a dry stone wall that survives to a height of 1.5 meters in some places. About 25 meters west of the wall platform, there is a collapsed structure and a rock-cut cistern that is likely ancient in date. Only a handful of ceramics were found in the area, making more precise dating difficult. The modern town of Porto Caglio was largely built up with modern structures, but we were able to survey many accessible undeveloped areas. The visibility of the units was generally poor, and the frequency of finds was overall very low. But we did identify a concentration of materials in a parking area at the edge of the permit boundary that seemed to be eroding from the preserved colluvial deposit adjacent to the parking lot. The pottery, which is mostly undiagnostic body sherds, includes classical Hellenistic and Roman material. The vast majority of finds collected during the survey were found along the northern slopes of Porto Caglio Bay. Most of the ceramics collected in these units seem to derive from a complex of structures located on the northern limit of this permit boundary. A part of this structure was built above a crevice in a karstified breccia formation. We identified a very dense scatter of ceramics preserved preserved in and eroding out of the breccia beneath the structure. The dominant period represented in the material from this context is early Helladic II, with a few possible Mycenaean sherds. Many of the early Helladic sherds that eroded directly out of the breccia are relatively large, and several refit with each other, perhaps suggesting that they were intentionally deposited into the crevice during the Bronze Age. All thought the vast amount of datable material from the breccia deposit is early Helladic II. Both that deposit and the units on the slopes below include later material, including modern and early modern glazed sherds, a late classical Hellenistic base from a small bowl, and a Roman amphora body fragment. This is currently the earliest well-dated Bronze Age context as far south in Mani. In 1571, Fabiano Barbo reported that the Achilleo fortress was built by the Ottomans in 1569 and destroyed by the Venetians the following year. The fortress currently located on the property of a local landowner who graciously permitted us to conduct surface collections in his backyard. In addition to collecting surface units in and around the fortress, Phil Saperstein, with the help of Sarah Murray, collected drone and ground-based imagery for mapping, photogrammetry, and 3D modeling. A few finds from the survey suggest that there may have been some activity in the area prior to the Ottoman period, but the features of the construction are broadly in line with a mid-16th century date. The 2024-2025 pilot seasons of the Southern Mani archaeological projects in Portocaglio were surprisingly productive, especially given the restricted size of the study area. In addition to identifying an interesting, albeit puzzling, early Bronze Age site, we also were able to shed some light on the later periods of occupation in the region. Over the next 5 years, we will expand the survey to other portions of Southern Mani, starting with the Matapan Peninsula, the area around the site of Tenaron. In closing, we want to thank all of our colleagues at the Laconia Neforia and the Canadian Institute for supporting the project, especially Maria Trulli, Evangelia Eleftheriou, Jacques Perreault, and Jonathan Tomlinson. Thank you to the Mani team. Thank you, Chelsea and Bill. Λοιπόν, παιδιά, κοντεύουμε. one more site to go. We're going back up north to Argyros. The Argyros archaeological team undertook its 33rd. You know, on my pictures, I was looking for pictures to put on the directors, the directors' pictures, you know. And since people like David here were director twice in there of the institute, you know, and 2 times, like I was been director twice. Well, we need 2 pictures, one from the first years you were director and one from the later years. And so I was looking for a picture of me of the earlier, which was in 1987. And I found one on which I still have a bit of hair here. The later one I put on a hat. It's just I thought 33rd excavation camping, know me, huh? Okay, so the archaeological team undertook its 33rd excavation campaign in 2025 with the support of the Effort of Prehistoric and Classical Antiquities of Ceres, the staff of the Amphipolis Museum, a team of archaeologists and workers, as well as the participation of around 60 students. Research focused on 2 sectors. On the Angelopoulos Plateau, where we continued the excavation of a large building bordering one of the city's main streets, and especially in the Koutloudis sector, where for several years we have been uncovering shops, workshops, and houses built to the north of the city's commercial agora. In the Koutloudis sector, the following rooms were partially or completely excavated. In Complex P, P3, P5, P7, P7, P9, P10, as well as the area bordering P10 to the east and south. In Complex Q, Q4, 5, 12, and 13. To these should be added the space between the eastern end of P and Q and the city's main street at the access gate. As usual, the rooms yielded a substantial amount of material. Among the finds, it's important to note the discovery of a third gastraphetes bolt head in room P10, in addition to the two found in 2023. The interest of this discovery lies in the inscription on these points, Philippou, which clearly refers to the campaigns of Philip II and his capture of Argylos in 357 BC. We should also note the presence of several different types of millstones in one, all of them in one of the shops, P5, and a brazier in Q12. In addition to excavating buildings P and Q, we have taken a greater interest in the issue of the water management of Argylos. Two large wastewater channels were partially excavated, and a series of small test trenches led to the discovery of a clay pipeline carrying clean water which runs along the front of Building P. This evening, however, I would like to focus my report on an unusual discovery made in the immediate vicinity of the city's fortification. We continued uncovering the fortification at the southeast gate. Its main features are as follows. On the eastern side, the entrance is protected by a rectangular tower or bastion. On the western side, it is bordered by the so-called inner fortification, which restricts access to the agora. At the gate, this section of wall runs parallel to the tower bastion, but immediately south of the entrance, it changes direction. Furthermore, to the south of the gate, the city's main street continues toward the harbor, splitting into two branches. One, unpaved, runs along the fortification, while the paved road leads towards the shoreline. All evidence also suggests that another paved street extended to the east. Thus, people wishing to enter the city could use this gate. Once inside, they could follow the main street, which probably led up to the Acropolis, or turn left to reach the agora. The first room encountered when heading toward the agora is a modest in size, room V1. Triangular in shape and leaning against the fortification wall, it likely formed the initial element of a stoa marking the eastern boundary of the agora. It draws attention both to its architectural configuration and for the material uncovered there. A test trench yielded a column as well as the base of a pedestal basin. Studies on urban development in archaic and classical Greece have shown that in cities not planned according to a hypodamian grid, triangular spaces often appear where planners attempted to correct an irregular urban layout to create right-angle alignments. This is precisely what we observe here. The change in direction of the internal fortification wall immediately south of the gate was intended to form a right angle with buildings L and P, thereby giving the space in front of them, the city's commercial agora, a rectangular shape. The hypothetical reconstruction shown here reflects this configuration. Rooms, perhaps shops, leaning against the fortification and using it as a back wall define the eastern boundary of the agora. However, this change in the wall's orientation resulted in the creation of a triangular space, V1, at the junction of the two wall segments. Moreover, Research on cult spaces in Greek cities has shown that such atypical and small spaces were often used for small shrines. This phenomenon is well documented in Athens, where several hundred of these parodia iera were recorded. It is also known that Greeks installed purification devices at the entrances to public spaces such as agoras. In two speeches by Aeschines, the orator mentions the periranteria of the agora, noting that access to them was forbidden to those unworthy of civic rights, highlighting their ritual and civic importance. These installations were placed at the entrance to the agora, as confirmed by the discovery of fragments found in situ at one of its limits in Athens. Now, in room V1, located at the northeastern entrance to the agora, we found precisely such a pedestal basin in terracotta. In this context, it is very tempting to interpret it as a periranterion, that is, a basin used for purification. This discovery echoes another one made in 2016 at the beginning of the excavation of Building P. In the first room of this complex, P1, which borders a north-south street, also leading to the agora, we uncovered a set of unusual objects. 6 stone pithos lids stacked on top one of another, next to the remains of a clay pedestal basin. These elements were arranged in front of the end of a roof tile laid flat on the ground at the center of the room. Along the west wall, a rectangular bench had been built. The material found on the floor is scarce, the remains of a large jar that could have held water, a few amphor fragments, a jug, a small drinking vessel, and a few coins. A re-examination of the excavation notebooks and photographs now lead us to consider that this too may have been a parodia iera, accessible to people entering the agora from the street running along the west side of the room. From this perspective, V1 and P1 may represent two archaeological examples of such installations at Argylos, combining urban organization and purification practices at the entrance to a civic space. Ladies and gentlemen, merci. This report marks the end of the first part of our evening, and I would like to thank all archaeologists, students, colleagues who have participated to these 2025 excavations under the auspices of the Canadian Institute. Thank you.